Let me know once you are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so let us go ahead and get started. So till yesterday, we did take a look at what is HL7. We also did talk about what is HL7 uh, data types, what are HL7 data types, and what are the few of data types that we will be using regularly, right? So today, we'll go ahead and take a look at networking. This is kind of a prerequisite for us to understand about Mirth Connect and how do we implement an interface using Mirth Connect as an integration engine. So at the bare minimum level, whenever we talk about transaction of an HL7 message, there is definitely a sending system which is going to send the data, and there is definitely a receiving system which is going to receive the data, right? In very plain, simple terms. But how is that HL7 being exchanged between two different entities or two different systems? That's what that's where network will come into play, right? So there are many different ways of exchanging the data between these two entities, and based on the type of connection model, we may be implementing an interface on Mirth Connect as well. Not just Mirth Connect, in fact, with if you go to any integration engine, there are various connection models that each of the integration engine supports. So we need to understand and know what are the few basic connection models that we use regularly so that we can implement an interface based on those connection models within Mirth Connect when we start Mirth Connect, right? So a few of us might be already aware of the concepts of networking. Few of us may not be aware of anything because you may be a fresher or you may not have experience with what all networking terms are, how do you troubleshoot, and all of these things. So we are going to cover networking at least to the level what it is needed for an HL7 interface developer or HL7 implementation analyst, right? So let us go ahead and take a look at what connection models we support or usually use in an interface. And we'll also talk about a little bit more about TCP/IP in terms of troubleshooting and all. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with the first connection model. First one is the folder connectivity, and this is by far the easiest one and a quickest one. So basically what happens in a folder connectivity is you will have a shared folder in the source system, which is nothing but server 1 as per this picture. And data will be dumped into this particular folder. It may be dumped in the form of HL7 message or a CSV file or commodity or some other format like maybe JSON or something. Apparently, once the data is dropped into this folder, our interface engine has to pick up that data from the shared folder and then send it to another shared folder present on the server. Okay, that may be a different server altogether. So for that, you will be using folder to folder. So this type of model is called as folder to folder connectivity. Obviously, within the integration engine, we'll go ahead and configure how to pick up the data from the shared folder of server 1 and then drop it into the shared folder of server 2. Okay, one quick thing to understand whenever you use such uh, folder connectivity, you are going to use it between the systems which are present within the same network. Once you change the network, it is not an approachable option, and you because as you're sharing the folders, there may be possibility of breach of someone getting into those folders, getting the data that you're saving there and all. So that's the reason it is not recommended to go ahead and use folder to folder connectivity in terms of writing the data from one server to another if they are not on the same network. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one, which is TCP/IP. So TCP/IP stands for Transfer Control Protocol or Internet Protocol. So this is one of the most widely used implementation format or implementation connectivity model uh, because of uh, because of mm, um, one reason is that it is quickest and the most frequently used implementation form. When I say quickest, the way you connect is quick, and there are a few things that you have to obviously set up in terms of networking in order to go ahead and proceed with TCP/IP related implementation. But basically, it's kind of industry standard that most of the people will implement. But this is not the only choice. Again, we are taking a look at all the different types of connection models, but one of the frequent one is TCP/IP model. So, in order to understand TCP/IP a little bit deeper, we'll start from basics and take a look at few troubleshooting steps as well. What should be your uh, boundary to understand this particular connection model in terms of networking? Because we are not networking engineers, we are interface developers, right, or interface implementers. So, we just need to know at least to some extent or understand how to troubleshoot couple of things in terms of TCP/IP so that you can relay that information to the networking team and they will take it over from there. Okay. So let's see few basic things about TCP/IP. We have three different connection models, three different terms called LAN, WAN, and VPN. So LAN is nothing but local area network. Let's say you are in a building and within that building there are 15, 20 systems. If you are interconnecting all the systems with the help of few cables and all, then system A can communicate to system B can communicate to system C within the same network. So that is called as local area network. Okay, how do you interconnect all of these devices or systems and all? It's purely um, based on various methodologies. You can connect them through switches, cables, routers, and all. So you would use various devices and connect all of them together, and all of them will be connected to a central server, and that server will help us to go ahead and exchange data between two different systems within the same network if there needs to be. Okay. Once all the systems are on same network, they can intercommunicate with each other. Next, let us take a look at WAN, which is wide area network. So in wide area network, you're talking about multiple buildings of such kind. In the first scenario in LAN, we did take a look at one particular building and all the systems interconnected within that building, but not with the outside world. But in terms of WAN, let's say that you have two different buildings or three different buildings of same kind. All of them have their own local area networks. But when we interconnect these three entities, then that is when it becomes a WAN. WAN refers to wide area network. So because it is expanding more to more than one local area network, it is called as wide area network. Next, let us talk about VPN. So this is a term that we most frequently used in the last 2 years. At least we have heard about this a lot in the last 2.5 years since the time the corona started, right? Everyone moved back to home. Everyone is working from home. If you observe, whenever we are at office, there are few websites or few knowledge base URLs that we won't be able to open within the network of the hospital or network of your office, right? Uh, Reason being to protect the data that they have, to make sure that it is accessible only to the employees and not to the outside world. So what usually hospitals or any organizations, network offices or anything, they would go ahead and have a dedicated VPN tunnel between the employee and the employer, right? When we want to connect, we usually have to go ahead and log into the VPN, connect through VPN to the office network, and then start our work. So what is it doing? So when you connect through a VPN, it means that you are creating a special tunnel between yourself and your office. And when you build this tunnel, the communication that happens between you and your office is secure. And this is kind of be considered as you are present within the office, which means when you connect to your office network through VPN, it means that you are localized and you are present within the office. It will assume that way. And it will give you the access to all the various things based on your access levels. Okay, outside people are anyways not allowed, but someone who connects as VPN, they'll be able to see at least few things, whatever they are allowed to go ahead and see. Right. Next, let us take a look at what is IP address. So as we are interconnecting many devices within the network, there will be an address associated with each of these devices. These are called as IP addresses. Okay, so or nothing but internet protocol address. And it will help us to go ahead and uniquely identify any device within the network, whether it is mobile or whether it is a printer or whether it is a phone or whether it is a system or a tab or mobile phone, anything. Anything that connects it to the network will definitely have an IP address associated with it. So it would something look like this, and that will help us to um, uniquely identify the device within the network. Next, let us take a look at port number. So let's take a metaphor to understand what is a port number. Now, if you consider IP address as the address of a house, right? It will, when the data has to go to a certain server, you will need the IP address, like the way we need address of a house to reach that particular house. Now, next is port numbers. Port numbers are access points which will help you to get into the house, like doors, windows, ventilations, and all. Okay, so those are access points which will help you to freely move in and out of that particular house. So whenever you want to transact data between two different systems through TCP/IP, first you should need to know what is the destination of that particular receiving system, which is nothing but what is the IP, and what is the port number that we'll be using on that specific IP address. Right? That's where this port number will come into play. Port numbers are of two kinds. One is hard port and the other one is soft port. Hard ports are nothing but the ones you are seeing on the system, which are the physical ones that you can feel and see it. So basically, these ports will help you to exchange the data. Now, I'm talking here and you are able to hear that, right? So apparently, my voice is getting converted into packets and it is coming to you and you are able to hear that. And this is happening through the hard ports. Now, we have something called as software ports as well. So software ports are nothing but the ones that we don't see on the system, but they are internally available within the operating system. So any operating system has its own list of ports. There are 65,000 plus ports that you can use. And by using a certain port number, you are saying that you are going to transact data through that port number only. Okay, now let us take a look at few networking commands. So when you're working with TCP/IP, it is a common practice to know few basic steps or few basic troubleshooting steps so that you would perform these troubleshooting steps before reaching out to a networking engineer indicating an issue, right? So let us take a look at those few small troubleshooting steps in terms of TCP/IP connection. So first is you need to figure out how to go ahead and generate, or sorry, how to not generate, but how to go ahead and check the IP address, right? So you can use this command called ipconfig, which stands for IP configuration. Okay, you can see that there are many adapters that are coming up. Each adapter is nothing but the port number that you are seeing or the Wi-Fi network card that you are seeing. So you may have the Ethernet adapters, which is nothing but when you connect your Ethernet cable to your port, and it will have Wi-Fi related adapters, which are nothing but uh, our software ports that are or not software boards, but the network cards that are ready to uh, exchange the data, but will help the system to have an address for itself, right? So Ethernet adapters will have their own dedicated IP address. Wi-Fi adapters will have their own dedicated networking IP address. So you can see that within my system, I have VMs running. I have VMs turned off. So that's the reason you are seeing many Ethernet adapter, LAN adapter, and so on. So ignore that. When you run it on your system, you will get one or two, not more than that. One indicating LAN adapter and the other one indicating wireless LAN adapter. So I'm connected to Wi-Fi right now. That's the reason you can see that we have this IP address here, IPv4. So IPv4 stands for IP version 4 address. So right now we are using version 4 of IP address protocols that we have, but we'll be soon shifting to V6, and that V6 will be used a lot in the future. Okay, this is because of the fact that we have exhausted using all the IPv4 addresses. All the permutations and combinations are done, and we don't have any more new addresses to use, or we are near to that expiry. So that's the reason we will be using IPv6, a new way of having an address for the system. Okay, next, now that we know how to find out IP address, next is we need to figure out how to find out empty port number. So the port numbers are not empty always. If some port number is used by some other system, you cannot use it for your interface implementation. Okay, so you need to figure out which one is empty. So we have few commands to do that. We have a command called netstat, which stands for network statistics. And you can use this term called find str and give certain port number. So as you can see, we haven't received anything. So if you are not receiving anything, then it is called as an empty port number. Because if it is used by some of the other system, then it would show up some information on whether that port number is listening or whether that the connection is established or not, and so on. So let us go ahead and take a look at that. To check for a sample, I'll use port number 1433, which is used to used by used by SQL Server. So now once I said 1433, then it is stating that it is listening, which means the port number is active and ready to receive the data. All right, so this way you may need to find out which port number is empty for you and use that in your implementation. Okay, now how do you troubleshoot in case if you get any issues of this kind? Once you find out IP port number, you have established a connection between source system and destination system. So next we need to figure out how do we troubleshoot certain issues, right? So in terms of networking, first thing that comes into mind when you want to troubleshoot things is uh, we have to know the IP address of the server, destination server that we are trying to connect to. Then we can perform a ping command. So what does ping do? It will go ahead and send 4 packets to the destination system. So it will send 4 packets to the destination system, and and it will go ahead and see if we are able to get those packets back from the destination system. Okay. So if you are able to get those packets back, then it will determine that it is able to go ahead and connect to that particular destination server. So that's the first step that we do, whether we are able to reach the destination server or not. For example, you can use this command called ping and say google.com, right? I'm using google.com, but behind the scenes, it is going to every website that you see is used as some name, but behind the scenes that is associated with an IP address. So when you do a ping, you are actually pinging the IP address or the domain name. All right. Domain names are usually used for ease of our understanding as human user. If we won't be able to remember or recollect the IP addresses of every server that we want to connect to. Everyone will remember google.com. No one will remember the number behind the scenes, which is used by google.com, right? So you are basically pinging the IP address or domain name, and if you get a response back successfully, then this is how it looks like. It says that you have sent 4 packets, you have received 4 packets, and loss is 0. All right. So in the same way, if you are not um, able to connect to a server, then let's see what happens. So it immediately says ping request could not found. I will give some random number. So it will immediately display that ping request cannot send this particular or cannot find that particular host. And if it is trying to go ahead and connect, it will keep on trying, and at last it will say that it is unable to connect to the host again. Okay. So if you do this step, you'll at least understand whether you are able to connect to the destination system or find the destination system from your system or not. Okay, that's the first step of troubleshooting that we have to perform. If you are able to connect, then there is something wrong with the port number. If you are unable to connect, then it is for sure that it's the port number. It's the port number that is creating the problem. Okay. So how do you did?
Yeah, hey Dixon, sorry to cut you in between.
Yeah.
So could you please tell me a little bit, about the netstat command that you used initially? Netstat dash an
Mm-hmm.
and this thing. Yeah, can you just tell me?
So,
Because I
mhm.
run the same command on my PC with the port 104 and it's showing establish
Correct.
TCP.
If
Yeah.
you are, if there is an active transaction, if it is connected between, if the connection is established between two different entities, then it will show the status as established. Now, right now, I am not running. So this 1433 port number is on my is the basic port number used by any SQL Server installation.
Okay.
Okay. The application is not actively running right now on my system. That's the reason it is showing as listening, which means it is ready to go ahead and listen to establish a connection with another entity altogether. The moment I open my SQL client, it will establish the connection with that SQL client. My SQL server will establish the connection with SQL client, and it will show it as established connection. So if someone is getting connected through that port number, it will show it as established. If someone is not connected and if it is ready to listen for any connections, it will show it as listening.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Basically, it
we
is used to track any network statistics, and this is one of the commands. Uh, there are many commands as part of network statistics that you can use, and there
okay.
are very many various combinations. Even I don't use any many things apart from netstat of finding this port number. We might be using netstat just -a to find out all the port numbers that are being used. For example, if you just use netstat -a, it will give you all the port numbers that you are using on this particular server and what is the status of each of those port numbers. You can see that few are listening. You can see that few are established. Few ports are actually being used actively and all.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, we are talking about ping. So when you do a ping, when you perform a ping, you are checking whether the destination server is able to connect or not. And when you want to go ahead and check uh, whether the port number on that particular destination is connecting or not, you would be using a different command altogether called telnet. Okay, you can assume it this way. You are in a ground and there is total fog in the ground. You do not know whether there is an obstacle 200 meters away from you. So, what is the best way for you to know? If you just take a ball or a stone, throw it away, and see if you can hear anything. Let's say if you have a ball, how do you determine whether there is an obstacle? You throw a ball, it uh, it goes to that particular obstacle. If you get back the ball, it means that there is an obstacle for sure, right? But if you don't get a ball, then you can assume that there is nothing on the other side. Similarly, when a ping command is executed, you are doing the same thing. You're sending four packets to your desired address, and if that address is available, it will go and return those packets, indicating that I'm here. If not, then all the four packets will be lost. Okay, let's see how does that look like. Wow. So when you use 127, it's called as loopback address, which is for the network card present within the system. Okay. Now it is trying to go ahead and connect to, I gave some random number. It is trying to go ahead and connect to that particular server. So now we can see that it says request timed out. Let's look at the analysis at the end. If it was successful, then you would say it would say sent 4, received 4, and lost packets are 0, right? Now, once the destination is unable to connect after even sending 4 packets, so it says sent packets are 4, received is equal to 0, so loss is 100%. Okay, so through that, you will understand that you are unable to connect to the destination server correctly. Or basically, you are unable to connect any destination server at all. Okay, at times you will be seeing partial results that indicates that there is something wrong with the setup between your system and the destination system. It may be issue with VPN or the way the data is being routed. So there will be a lot of issues. And network engineers will troubleshoot that. If you frequently see that there is a discrepancy or intermittent connection, you'll definitely see send packets 1 received 3, send packets 4 received 3, or you will see send packets 4 received 2 only and losses 2. So that indicates that there is something wrong with the network for sure. So you have to go ahead and troubleshoot. In order to have a successful connection, it should always be a 0% loss. Okay, now that you are able to connect to the destination IP address using the port number, you are able to figure out that you are able to establish a connection with the destination IP address, but you are able to see that you are still unable to connect to the destination server or send the data to the destination server. Then what could be the problem? So that brings us to the next level of troubleshooting to see whether the port number is open or not. Now, what do we mean by that? Let's see. Every internal network or every organization has something called as firewall. So this firewall is a protection between the internal organization systems or devices or anything and the outside external world. So whenever someone has to connect to this particular organization system, they have to pass through this firewall. This firewall will contain all the rules and regulations, whether a port number has to be open, accept the data from certain IP address, or reject the data from certain IP address. And there are many more things that will be in play, okay, which network engineers are aware of. But as a basic fact, we know that firewall is used to maintain or block the port numbers or open the port numbers. Okay. So if you are able to connect to the system or to your destination system through IP address, but still unable to connect to the destination server or transact the data with the destination server, then there definitely be a case where port numbers are not working. So a situation might be where the port number present on the firewalls are not open, or basically the organization has closed down all the port numbers and will open a certain port number based on request. Okay. How do you determine that? Ping will tell you whether you are able to connect to the server. Which command will tell us whether we are able to connect to the server at certain port number. So such command is called as telnet. So Telnet will help you to go ahead and connect to the server on certain port number. Let's see. So I would say www.google.com. So google.com, when you're typing google.com, you're connecting to the Google server based on certain port number called 443. Now, when I typed 443, you can see that I was able to connect to the server, right? When you are able to connect, you will see or you will have received this empty window indicating that you are connected. Okay. I'll use the same command with a different port number. Let's see what happens. So it says connecting to google.com. And after a couple of minutes or seconds, it will say that it is unable to connect. Okay. But usually when telnet is working fine, then it will immediately shoot up an error. So it will immediately help you to get connected. So as you can see here, we are unable to connect to google.com, and that will help us to determine that issue is with port number. So that will help us to definitely segregate and track down what the problem is. Once you feel that that's the issue, you can reach out to the network engineers. They will take it from there.
Hey Dixon, my is
Yeah.
showing telnet is not recognized as internal or external command.
Yeah. So telnet is a command which has to be enabled separately. You can just Google it to see how to enable telnet in the system, and it
Okay,
will give you the steps of how to enable that one.
okay, thank you.
Okay. By default, it is disabled in Windows, but you can enable it. Okay. So it says that connection failed because it is unable to connect to that host on this port number, right? So that's what those are the few troubleshooting steps, and these are the things that we have to perform before submitting any issue to networking team. You can get deeper into the networking aspects of implementations, like knowing more about how to track the data, how to track the packets that are being routed, from which IP address you are going to which IP address. All of those can also be tracked in terms of real time. For example, if I say uh, ping or tracert is a command that is used to go ahead and see how the data is being sent from one IP to another before it is going to reach the destination server. Okay, so it took 2 milliseconds to reach this particular IP address, and it is routing the data from between many different servers. The packets that you are sending to google.com is going through all of these servers before it reaches the final server. Okay, when I said google.com, it passed through all of these servers and reached the final server. So that's how you can go ahead and figure out trace. So in this way, there are many commands. You can use tools like there are many tools that you can use in order to track these packets or in order to see what is happening at each level of uh, networking concepts when you're actually transacting the data. So basically, that accounts for greater knowledge on networking. So if you are interested, you can go ahead and definitely explore those aspects. But from integration perspective, an integration developer, at least performing few troubleshootings like ping or telnet is essential. Next, let us take a look at FTP. So FTP, SFTP stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol. So that will help us to go ahead and transact the data through FTP server. So it seemed like a folder to folder connectivity, but it's just that uh, the folder server is a secure server maintained by some other third party system. Okay, let's say I'm going to host an FTP server. I will maintain it. I will make sure that um, the entire server is secure, and all the folders that are present on the server are uh, authorized or are accessible only to the authorized entities. So what happens is a server is hosted, folders are created for every client, If client 1 wants to send the data to client 3, they will drop the files into this FTP folder, which is accessible only through username and password. And then client 3 can pick up the data from FTP server if he is able to go ahead and connect to that particular folder. Again, he has his own IP address, sorry, his own credentials to log into that certain folder and then get the data. So that's how FTP connection model is used. So when there are large files that has to be transacted between organizations, the go-to option is SFTP. SFTP stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol. That is what we use usually. Next, what we have is web services. So alongside TCP/IP, web services is another one of the models that is used, especially today as we move into the REST world. REST APIs are something that is being used more frequently than TCP/IP. Okay, but 5 years ago or 6 years ago, it was the TCP/IP which was dominating the world. But from the last 4 or 5 years, we see that web services or whether it is SOAP or REST, web services are the one which are taking over in terms of connection model. There are reasons behind it. If you are implementing a TCP/IP related interface, then you have to have a VPN tunnel built between your system and the destination system. Right. Without that, you won't be able to connect or you won't connect because you will be transacting sensitive information over the internet. Right. So a VPN is a must between sending system and the receiving system. So that's an overhead. Building up a VPN, having a network engineer, making sure that infrastructure maintenance is there in terms of maintaining firewall and all of those things. That is very, very a difficult task. And basically difficult in terms of hiring resources of networking, making sure that they are always available in case if there is an issue that comes up, they may not be available on time. So these kinds of issues will come up in the VPN world. But with REST services or web services, you are just connecting to a REST service, same like our google.com, which is secure over HTTPS. So the data that you're transacting with google.com is secured. It is encrypted and then it is transacted to Google. Or if you're, let's say, Gmail, or if you're connecting to Facebook, the data transaction or the data between transferred between these two systems is completely encrypted. No one will be able to steal it. Even if they steal it, they won't understand it because they won't have key to decrypt the data that is being transacted. Right? So that's the reason web services are quick to use and data is secure. There is no scare of data being stolen. So there are two basic REST services that we can use, SOAP and REST. REST is the one that is most frequently used. SOAP is something that was there in the earlier days. Slowly after 2009, REST has come into play and REST is being used a lot in today's world. So the major difference between both of them is there are many things, uh, but basically, SOAP can be transacted in the form of XML only, and whereas REST services can be transacted in XML as well as JSON. So there are other data standards or data formats as well that we can use in terms of RESTful services, like Turtle is one of them, apart from XML and JSON. And both of them will work over TCP HTTP connection itself, which are the protocols to exchange the data in the web world. So Mukul is asking, REST is an HTTP protocol over internet? Yes, it is. Okay, so you'll be using any one of them. But what is RESTful services and all? It is really a beautiful concept. Uh, I would recommend you guys go and learn more about this one or understand more about this one. This will help us in the future if you're planning to learn Fire as a standard. FHIR as a standard is purely based on RESTful services only. Okay. Next, let us take a look at the last one, which is database. So database connection model is a connection model where our application like Mirth Connect or integration engines like Rhapsody or Cloverleaf or any other integration engine which can connect to the database. Now, when you want to connect to the database, it's not that you just connect to some DB and get the data. There is always a middleman called as driver, which will help us to go ahead and connect to the DB. Every SQL um, product, let's say every SQL product like SQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle SQL, or you may have MySQL, or you may have MongoDB. Every database that you talk about, every database product, I mean to say, they will definitely have a driver, and all the drivers are managed together by the driver manager. So let's say if your Mirth application wants to connect to the DB, it has to provide or tell who is the driver and provide the username and password to the driver in order to connect to that database. Okay, let's say this is MS SQL Server. I have to tell that driver is MS SQL Server at so and so address, and this is the username and password. Then this driver will help us to go ahead and connect to the tables, connect to the database. So driver is always going to be the moderator between you and the database. Okay, that's the regular structure. So what connection models we are going to work with? So we'll implement these folder to folder connectivity. We'll create channels based on folder to folder connectivity. We'll create channel based on TCP/IP related connectivity, and we'll also create channel based on database related connectivity. So we will see how to create them, how to implement real-time implement interfaces and all in detail. Okay, so that concludes our today's session on networking. So now that we know various connection models, we'll go ahead and see these connection models in Mirth Connect on how to implement this. Any other question? Any questions from anyone? Okay.
Dixon, this is
Yeah.
regarding this RESTful APIs. In this HL7 Mirth, we are not going to learn about RESTful services, right? We are all only doing the Mirth interfaces.
Right.
Mirth engine.
We'll be seeing folder to folder connectivity. We'll be seeing TCP/IP related connectivity. We'll be seeing
Right.
database. We are not going to see REST API. But if you guys want, I can give an overview of how to configure that and work through that. I mean, I can cover that for 15-20 minutes to show you how to set up REST API on source side and destination side.
Sure.
Yeah, that I think
That
that
will
will
be
be
helpful.
helpful.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the hospitals, healthcare is
Started
also
using
moving towards.
REST.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not only started. I think moving forward, maybe not very. I mean, like very soon they will be implementing
Mhm.
it because of the the government standards that they want to implement
Mhm.
in next maybe in few months or in a year or something like
Got it.
And Dixon, the folder
Mhm.
to folder, is it still using in network, like so in like some of the facilities, like they are using that or no, or it's obsolete?
No. It is being used.
Oh,
Now, within the organization, if you have to transact data from one system to another, or you may be having needs of moving the data from one folder to another, you will be using that model.
okay.
Dixon, if in say for example in real world we actually have to create an application which
Mhm.
is a large amount of transactions, right? I mean the volume is high. In that case, which connection do you recommend? Because web services being XML, I mean, it's heavier than TCP/IP. What do you recommend? Which is a better way if it is a very high volume transaction?
Even if it is high volume, in today's world, optimization is there, but high volume of XML will come into picture only when we relatively compare it with other data standards like JSON or Turtle, right? A JSON message might be 10 KB, whereas I'm just giving you an example. It may be 10 KB, whereas XML will be very heavy when compared to JSON because of the content of data, tags, and all that we have, right? But irrespective of that, the it's not based on volume that we determine which particular thing to go with, whether it is RESTful or SOAP web service or TCP/IP, because at the end of the day, the entire data set has to be exchanged in any way, right? So if you don't want that heavierness to be there, then we don't go with XML at all. The choice would be to go with REST API. That is one of the reasons why most of the organizations are preferring to use REST API using JSON than when you compare it with XML. Right. So if you ask me the better way, then go with JSON, not with XML. If you are on XML, then obviously things are very much streamlined, but we have to bear that repercussion of having that heaviness in the exchange that you are going to make.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, I do have. Maybe my question looked a little bit weird. Okay, so
No, no, not at all. Go ahead. Go for it.
so for example, okay, like facilities, they are sending HL7 data, okay, through a VPN tunnel, okay, and the Mirth Connect is also receiving that data through maybe they are on the same VPN tunnel or something like that, and they are using TCP/IP. They're using this VPN thing. So my question is, suppose if the facility VPN is down, so it means we are not receiving the data from facility, or like is the like or suppose how this VPN thing, how we can
Determine VPN is working
yeah, VPN
or
is
VPN
working
is
or
up and
not.
running.
Yeah, something like that.
See, when we say VPN, you can assume it as a tunnel. And the reason why I said it as a specific tunnel, you can just think that a specific bridge which is connecting your system directly to the destination system. Okay. But in reality, we are having some special cryptographic keys which are going to encrypt the data. So you will never see a scenario in a VPN where those keys are being compromised. Okay, unless the key is being shared by someone else uh, to to someone who is outside the organization, which network engineers has access to. So usually, when a VPN is being built, they will share the cryptographic keys through phone. They won't even share that through email. They will get on a call. They will tell that this is a key or these are the things that you have to use for setting up this VPN. And that is how the things are secure. And it will not be shared to anyone else apart from the network engineer on the other side so that they can have this decryption. Not only that, there will be many rules that will be in place. How do you determine? I don't think we as developers or not being from networking, we would need to do that. But to just give you an overview, there will be applications like Cisco, which will have many rule building aspects when we are building a VPN. Okay. So that will within those rule building aspects, they will define all the rules that has to be there in order to develop or connect to another system using a VPN. So there will be a few combinations that the source system will use with the destination system to make it a unique connection. And those rules are built on softwares like Cisco. Okay,
So
but if some rule is gone wrong, it the rules are such a way that if one small thing between those rules is gone wrong, it won't connect at all. Okay, so rules are built that way and they are very strong. And those rule combinations are in such a way that others won't be able to replicate it. Second thing, others won't be able to get the keys to go ahead and build the rules in that way, the cryptographic keys that they exchange. So that way, a VPN tunnel becomes unique between two different systems, and network engineers will have more better idea. I just have a high level idea based on the calls that I have attended. But you can definitely research more if you're interested to uh, know more about how that is done.
So directly we need not worried about, VPN is running, or, we do not care about VPN. So that's the responsibility of network guy, correct? Like,
Correct.
yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Exactly. If you do a ping, or if you, when you perform a ping test, if VPN is not in place, you won't be able to ping. As simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we have a question from Murli. Can you know the network tools which use for network troubleshooting? So Wireshark is one networking tool that people use. Apart from that, for me, so far I have used only the basic commands, the ping, the IP, the telnet commands. So that is the level of troubleshooting that we do. So this is what we need to understand. Our scope of understanding or troubleshooting networking related aspects is limited unless you have specific access to the networking tools and all. Uh, Even in case of Wireshark, when you run a Wireshark, you may not be able to go ahead and have access to everything to run it completely. So it purely depends on how much is your scope to troubleshoot. If you're networking engineer, there are many tools that you can use. There are many different tools. For example, I use some SQL connecting software, which will help me to understand whether some external system is able to connect to my SQL server or not. Now, when you are connecting your Mirth Connect application to your SQL server, we are going to face those challenges. Um, so there are few troubleshooting steps, or there are few things that we need to configure on the SQL Server side, which I know, so I am telling you beforehand. But even if that doesn't work, there are separate tools apart from Mirth application. There are tools which will tell you what is happening at each phase, whether it is able to connect to the driver, whether the driver is able to take the username and password, whether driver is going to connect based on that host name that you have given for that particular SQL server. It will tell you step by step what is happening, uh, and it will help us to determine where exactly the blockage is, right? So we have tools of that kind as well. But you can explore more if you're trying to figure out more on networking side, you can explore. But being an integration engineer, that's an add-on thing for you, because we won't be given access to uh, troubleshoot more on the networking side. Okay, any other questions from anyone? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So let us go ahead and conclude today's session here. We will continue on Tuesday. So Tuesday, we are going to start with Mirth Connect. We'll take a look at what are the important topics of, not important, but we'll start from basics. We are going to start from scratch. We'll start what is Mirth Connect. We'll have an application workflow. Then we will start looking at what is the architecture of each of the interface that we are going to create. And then we will see how to build those channels with the connection models that we looked at.
Tuesday
Are we going
means,
to? I'm sorry.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. My question, Dixon, when you start the Mirth classes, are we going to install Mirth on our local
Yes.
system? Or?
Yes.
Okay. It's an open source.
It's an open source software. Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, you will also show us like if there are any things that we have to follow during the
Absolutely.
installation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you all of those things. Mirth Connect installation is free and easy. I mean to say easy. It is just a few clicks away, but there are few things that you have to be aware of. So I'll tell you about those things. What things you have to keep in mind while installing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jitender, you had a question?
Okay, no, the thing is, you said na classes will be resumed on Tuesday. So Tuesday for Indians, for
Correct.
the
Sorry.
yeah.
Monday evening for the US folks
Yeah,
and Tuesday morning for Indian folks.
that's why the maybe some confusion between something.
Yes.
That's why I asked.
All right. Thanks everyone. You all have a very good day. We'll catch up next week. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you,
Thank
Dixon.
you.
Bye bye.